The great dying begins. At the forest's edge, someone screamed, "The ground is moving." No, not the earth itself, but something moving on it. Something unthinkable. A creature, towering like a nightmare. A bird as tall as 3 grown men standing shoulder to shoulder. Its massive legs like living tree trunks. This was the elephant bird, 10 feet tall, 1,000 pounds of muscle and feather. The largest bird to ever walk the earth. And now, for the first time, it had met its newest and deadliest predator, humans. Within 1,000 years, they were gone. Not one or two, but an entire evolutionary lineage wiped clean from the planet. This pattern wasn't isolated. It wasn't random. It was global. It was predictable. And it was horrifying. Wherever humans went, the megafauna vanished. Dr. Paul Martin, father of the overkill hypothesis, said it plainly. If you trace human footprints across the planet, you'll find that within a millennium, the giants disappear. Australia, the Americas, Madagascar, even the smallest islands. The equation is tragically simple. Humans plus megafauna equal extinction, and the data backs it up. Australia, 46,000 years ago, the first humans arrive. Within 10,000 years, 90% of all large land animals are gone. The diprotodon, a 6,000-pound wombat. Megalania, a 20-foot predatory lizard. The thylacoleo, the marsupial lion, all gone. In North America, humans crossed the Bering Land Bridge about 15,000 years ago. Within 3,000 years, mammoths, giant ground sloths, saber-toothed cats, dire wolves, short-faced bears, extinct. South America suffered too, losing 80% of its large animal species. The pattern repeated again and again, like a death spiral scratched into the archaeological record. But here's the most disturbing truth. It wasn't even hard. Computer models show that just 100 human hunters, not armies, not civilizations, could drive mammoths to extinction within 300 years. They didn't have to massacre entire herds. Each hunter needed only to kill 1 mammoth per year. That's it. These massive creatures reproduced slowly. Kill just 2% annually, and extinction becomes mathematically inevitable. We didn't need to be bloodthirsty, explains modeler Dr. John O'Roy. We only needed to be slightly better at killing than mammoths were at reproducing. And the methods humans used? Gruesomely effective. They drove herds off cliffs, set entire grasslands ablaze, walls of fire to corral and trap. And most unsettling of all, they learned to target the young. Why risk a battle with a 10-ton adult mammoth when you could simply spear a 200-pound calf? By the time the juveniles were wiped out, the future of the species was already lost. Nowhere was this more devastating than in New Zealand. The Polynesians arrived around 700 years ago. And within just 100 years, a single human lifetime, every moa species was extinct. 9 types of these giant flightless birds, ranging from 30 to 500 pounds, gone. And with them, the Haast's eagle, their primary predator, also vanished. These birds had thrived for over 50 million years. They had survived ice ages, volcanic upheavals, climate swings, and then came humans. Game over in a century. The evidence is everywhere, in the very charcoal of history. Wherever people went, fire followed. In Australia, fire records show a massive spike immediately after human arrival. Rainforests that hadn't burned in 100,000 years suddenly caught flame. The giants couldn't adapt fast enough. Their world was being remade around them. Some tried to fight back. Cave bear skeletons bear the marks of human spears. And in turn, human bones show signs of brutal cave bear attacks. Mammoths learned to avoid human scent entirely. Island species retreated to the highest peaks. But it didn't matter. We always followed. The most heartbreaking evidence of all comes from something you'd never expect: dung. Mammoth droppings vanish from sediment layers mere centuries after human arrival. But pollen records tell a different story. The plants mammoths ate? They thrived after the mammoths were gone. The ecosystem could still support them. Nothing else had changed. Only one variable had vanished: the mammoths themselves. Dr. Martin once observed, "Every culture has flood myths," but he argued we need extinction myths too. We need stories about the worlds we ended, the species we erased, the diversity we compressed into a global, human-shaped monoculture. Because the truth is, the Great Dying was not natural. It wasn't fate. It wasn't unavoidable. It was human. Deliberate or not, it was entirely, unforgivably human. The bone wars. The smell of fresh blood drew them in. Around the mammoth's body, predators circled, biding their time for scraps. But the humans weren't going anywhere. They had ringed the fallen giant with fire, stationed sentries, and fortified their position. Their message was unmistakable. This meat belongs to us, and we're not sharing. Welcome to the Paleolithic marketplace, where every calorie was as valuable as gold and violence served as the price of admission. Every carcass became a war zone. As Dr. Manuel Dominguez Rodrigo, an expert in early species conflict, explains, humans didn't just compete with animals. We challenged every creature that wanted what we had. This rivalry is preserved in fossil evidence. Bite marks from hyenas laid over knife grooves from human tools, saber-toothed cats leaving puncture wounds in bones that had already been cracked by humans, and bear claw scratches overlapping stone cut marks. Layer upon layer of predatory claims, crime scenes frozen in time, where no one was innocent. At Olduvai Gorge, this relentless clash has been preserved in stone. One elephant's skeleton tells the whole story. First, humans arrived and carved out the best parts. Then lions tore through what remained. Hyenas came next, gnawing on the fragments. Finally, vultures stripped the leftovers. But the timeline was tight. Each species had just minutes, maybe hours, before the next arrived. Then humans disrupted the whole cycle. We didn't just participate in this brutal competition, we rewrote the rules. Our first trump card was fire. Fire was humanity's earliest monopoly, Dominguez Rodrigo notes. Other carnivores feared the flames. We could now guard a kill indefinitely, harvesting every edible scrap while rival predators watched helplessly. The fossil record reveals how this struggle escalated. Early evidence shows species feeding in turns, hyenas, then humans, then vultures. Later, the signs grow more violent. Hyena skulls smashed by stone tools, wolf bones scattered near human shelters as if they died defending territory. Sharing had ceased. This wasn't just competition anymore, it was conquest. In the shadowy interiors of ancient caves, the story turned darker. The Denisova cave, for instance, shows layer upon layer of tenant turnover. Neanderthals, Denisovans, modern humans, cave bears, and hyenas, all taking turns, all ousting one another. Caves weren't just shelters, they were battlegrounds. As archaeologist Dr. Bence Viola quips, they were the luxury apartments of the Ice Age. Everyone wanted in, no one wanted roommates. And eviction was fatal. This harsh rivalry shaped who we became. Our throwing spears weren't just for hunting, they were defenses designed to protect food from a distance. Cooperative hunting turned into collective defense. Language allowed us to plan not just the hunt, but the aftermath. Every advancement we made was, in part, a response to our rivals. Perhaps the most unexpected clue lies in the butchering itself. Cut mark analysis reveals that early humans often left the choicest meat behind, muscle tissue untouched, while they focused on internal organs, brains, and marrow. Were they avoiding fights? Or had they discovered that deeper, hidden nutrients were more valuable? We may have carved out a unique niche simply because it was the only one left. Lions took the flesh. Hyenas crushed the bones. So we invented tools, stone, antler, and eventually metal to reach what no other predator could, the marrow within. Competition, it seems, didn't just challenge us, it evolved us. Over the next 50,000 years, humans became unmatched in their efficiency. Sites from this period show complete carcass processing. Every tendon, every bone scraped clean. Even the bones were used, burned for fuel. Nothing wasted. Corpses weren't just food. They were resources. Our supremacy reshaped the animal kingdom. Cave bears, which once rivaled us for shelter, went extinct. Hyenas, once dominant scavengers, shrank in size and range. Wolves adapted. They started trailing human groups, scavenging our scraps until eventually they became our companions. Dogs. Survival now meant submission. The most harrowing scene comes from a cave in Spain. Inside, fossil remains of both humans and hyenas show marks of consumption, mutual predation, cannibalism. Both sides had begun eating one another during desperate winters. The conflict had turned so brutal that even the competitors themselves became meals. Dominguez Rodrigo summarizes it grimly. We didn't just win the carcasses, we conquered the entire system. While other species clashed over meals, humans laid claim to the future. Our competitors fought for scraps. We fought for dominance. Today, we walk through sterile supermarket aisles, wrapped meat trays in hand, unaware that they're the end product of a war that spanned 300,000 years. A war that reshaped ecosystems, drove giants to extinction, and turned us into the only predator left standing. The bear that stood 3 stories tall. The philosopher once said that what terrifies us about death is simply the loss of sensation. Clearly, he had never come face to face with Arctodus simus. This was no ordinary bear. The short-faced bear didn't kill merely for food. It hunted to dominate, claiming as its domain anything it could glimpse, scent, or even imagine. Towering at 11 feet when upright and weighing close to 2,900 pounds, it wasn't just a beast, it was a walking avalanche of muscle, ferocity, and territorial rage. In prehistoric North America, it reigned supreme. The earth itself seemed to shudder beneath its footfalls. When it ran, reaching speeds of up to 40 miles per hour, nothing on the open plains could hope to escape. Dr. Paul Mathoys, who devoted his academic life to analyzing the bones of Arctodus, told his peers at the University of Alaska, this creature wasn't just large. It was nature's brutal experiment in apex efficiency. With limbs longer than any living bear species, a skull engineered to pulverize bone, and a memory capable of mapping water sources across hundreds of miles, Arctodus was a predator unlike any the world has seen since. Roughly 23,000 years ago, as the first humans journeyed across the Bering Land Bridge into the Americas, they didn't have the benefit of textbooks or evolutionary theory. But they had something better: primal, gut-wrenching fear, an instinct that ensured survival. The Clovis people didn't leave written records, but their terror endures in the form of carvings etched into stone, depictions of towering bears dwarfing even mammoths, while tiny human figures scatter around them like insects. But perhaps the most haunting evidence of Arctodus comes from a site in White Sands, New Mexico, footprints left behind nearly 20,000 years ago. They tell a story no words ever could. A woman, balancing a small child, hurries across a muddy plain. Her steps quicken, her toes dig deep, her pace urgent. Hours later, a second trail appears, offset and following hers, a path that sends chills through modern archaeologists. Those were Arctodus tracks. She was aware of the pursuit, says Dr. Sally Reynolds, who led the team that uncovered the prints. Her trail shows tactical movement, sudden shifts in direction, looping patterns, classic evasive behavior seen in prey animals today. But this predator wasn't average. It wasn't just built for killing. It was intelligent. Unlike modern bears that rely on brute strength, Arctodus strategized. Fossil evidence suggests ambush hunting, lying in wait near waterholes, bottleneck valleys, and along migratory trails. It could learn. It remembered locations. It possibly remembered individuals. In Nebraska, a skull was unearthed bearing human tool marks, clear signs that someone had attempted to harvest meat from what they assumed was a dead bear. But just 16 feet away, archaeologists found a human skeleton, its spine snapped as if crushed like brittle twigs. That bear had been faking. Arctodus, it seems, had perfected the art of feigning death, remaining motionless for hours until prey or scavengers ventured too close. Wolves took days before approaching a fallen Arctodus. Humans? We had to adapt faster, or we, too, would become part of the fossil record. And yet, one mystery lingers. Why did Arctodus disappear just as human populations began to rise across the continent? Climate shifts may have played a part. Diminished prey availability likely contributed. But many scientists, including Matthews, suspect the cause was more human than environmental. Around the time humans refined projectile hunting tools, spears, darts, and atlatls, the massive bears began to vanish. We like to believe we fought and defeated them, but perhaps the truth is subtler and more unsettling. We didn't kill them directly. Matthews theorizes. We outmaneuvered them. We learned to live in the shadows between their ranges, adapted to avoid their presence, monopolized backup food sources. When their main prey vanished due to environmental changes, we had already claimed what little remained. We didn't win with brute force. We triumphed through strategy. The final Arctodus may have died confused and alone, its territory eerily quiet, its prey mysteriously absent. It never grasped that the hairless bipeds had rewritten the rules of survival, manipulating ecosystems, controlling water access, guiding entire animal herds like chess pieces. In a game it never knew it was playing, Arctodus was suddenly checkmated. Today, there are occasional sightings in Montana, hikers claiming to have glimpsed impossibly massive bears. Science typically explains these away as misidentified grizzlies. But indigenous tribes preserve a different memory. Their languages still hold names for a creature described as the one who owns the earth. Along with these names come protocols, ancient rules passed down across 10,000 years for how to respond if such a bear is encountered. Running? That's never on the list. You don't flee from something born to outrun you. You outthink it, if you can. That was humanity's advantage, not strength, not speed, but ruthless, coordinated intelligence. While Neanderthals may have bench-pressed 500 pounds, it was our ability to plan, adapt, and calculate risk that allowed us to survive. Y-size became death, 2 years inside the womb, draining the mother's calcium reserves just to grow tusks that might never fully develop. When the calf was finally born, it entered a world teeming with predators, weighing nearly 200 pounds. It would need 14 vulnerable years just to reach maturity. If it lived that long, that is the brutal arithmetic of extinction. For enormous creatures, everything takes more time, longer pregnancies, slower development, greater gaps between births. But in a world where danger comes quickly, slow reproduction spells doom. What once was an evolutionary advantage, being big, became a lethal trap, explains population biologist Dr. Chris Johnson. For 50 million years, sheer size was the best defense. Then humans arrived and rewrote the rules overnight. Just look at the numbers. A mammoth mother, if lucky enough to live 60 years, might give birth to 15 calves in her lifetime. A human woman could have that many children by the age of 30. Once we began targeting baby mammoths, we weren't just hunting individuals, we were eliminating generations before they had a chance to exist. The energy balance didn't help either. A single mammoth needed roughly 400 pounds of vegetation daily. During the ice ages, as grasslands dwindled, that meant walking up to 20 miles per day just to graze. Calories were burned to find calories. Even in good years, it was a tightrope. Then humans came, disrupting migratory routes, setting fires that destroyed grazing lands, and staking claim to water sources. Suddenly, that 20-mile march turned into 30, then 40. The energy balance broke. Mammoths began starving, slowly, silently. and being large made them vulnerable in other ways. You can't hide when you're that big, Dr. Johnson points out. You couldn't quickly change your diet. You couldn't breed faster to recover from losses. Every evolutionary benefit of size turned against them the moment humans showed up. The fossil record tells the story. In earlier extinction events, both large and small animals vanished in roughly equal numbers. But when humans were involved, size became the deciding factor. Extinction risks skyrocketed with every added pound. Any species over 100 pounds was at significantly higher risk. Those weighing over 1,000? Their fate was almost sealed. Take the giant beaver. At 300 pounds, it built dams so advanced they still impress modern engineering students, fortress-like lodges, remarkable intelligence, even problem-solving behavior akin to primates. But it took 3 years to reach reproductive age. Meanwhile, humans could eliminate 3 generations of regular beavers in that same time frame. Guess which one endured? Island species had it worse. On Mediterranean islands, elephants evolved into dwarfed forms due to resource scarcity. The tiniest stood just 3 feet tall. You'd think being smaller would help them survive. It didn't. Their biology hadn't changed fast enough. Reproduction rates stayed slow. They still took years to mature. Evolution works on geologic timescales, explains paleontologist Dr. Victoria Harridge. Species adapt over millennia. But humans? We changed the rules in a single generation. Evolution couldn't keep up. The cruelest irony? Many of these giant species were already adapting. Mammoths had begun evolving shorter tusks, less strain on calcium, faster growth. Ground sloths were becoming more nimble. Cave bears were shifting toward vegetarian diets to avoid direct competition. Too little, too late. Evolution needs thousands of years. Humans changed the game in mere decades. The few giants that survived still carry the scars. Elephants endured by becoming more intelligent, developing complex societies, teaching their young to fear humans, remembering water sources and danger routes. Rhinos survived through sheer aggression. Anything that charges first has a chance to live. Hippos made it by living in water, where humans couldn't easily follow. But even these survivors paid a price. Today's elephants mature faster than mammoths did, have shorter pregnancies, and grow smaller tusks. We didn't just wipe out the giants, we genetically edited the ones that remained. We selected for traits that could endure human pressure. Every living megafauna today, says Dr. Johnson bluntly, is a Holocaust survivor. They are the ones who adapted to us. The rest? They're fossils in museums. Once, size was a guarantee of safety, of strength, of dominion. Now, thanks to us, size equals death. And we're still proving it true. One elephant at a time. Gibraltar, 28,000 years ago.